Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. This is the portion that is the Gruber Breaking News, EV News. And we just found out something that made us ecstatic, actually. Apparently, Mary Barra has contacted Elon Musk, and they are going to be adopting the North American Charging Standard, the NACS standard
Yes.
that Tesla has been promoting. I remember last week Ford announced that they were also going to be adopting it. So now we've got the three major car manufacturers in North America all deciding to standardize.
I think this is great news, and I think the engineers and people behind the CCS charging standard are just going to howl about it. I took a little bit of time while Ford, after the Ford announcement, to kind of try to learn what it is that's going on. And CCS has a North American standard, CCS1, and they have a worldwide standard, CCS2, which is it is a little bit different. But ultimately, CCS is maybe an elegant technology, but it's a lot more complicated than the Tesla technology.
Sure. So just a few minutes ago, actually, 20 minutes ago or so, we were over at Gruber Motor Company. We were doing a quick TikTok video to show what this means. And even in our service center, we have two different charging standards. We've got the original Roadster, which really doesn't have a name other than Roadster charging method. It's a
Yeah,
big, bulky connector. And at that time, Tesla felt that this might become a standard. Then they improved on that design with the Trident connector and put that into the later version, sexy vehicles, starting with the Model S. So even in our service center, we have two different standards. Now, what this does is, this is going to, of course, force the rest of the EV incumbents or EV manufacturers to adopt the same standard. Because why would you create something completely different and kill your ability to sell your vehicle?
oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, very honestly, Pete, one of the first things that went through my head, I hear the news about GM adopting it. I think, okay, this truly is going to be the North American standard. Elon has said for a number of years that his patents are open. He wants he wants to share the knowledge. And I think, okay, my Volvo is irrelevant now.
Yeah, and it's like Mary Barr pointed out. She says that some of the things that are preventing, at least from what she's hearing from GM faithful, the adoption of EVs is there is no robust, consistent, standardized charging method in the United States. People enjoy being able to drive to a gas station knowing that any gas station is going to be able to fill their tank of gas because the nozzle sizes are consistent all across the various brands.
Exactly. And the Trident connector and Tesla's infrastructure has proven to be by far the most reliable and consistent
Mhm.
charging infrastructure in the nation. I mean, Electrify America is a brand of charging infrastructure that gets all kinds of bad press for doing things like killing car batteries and potentially starting fires. Other chargers are up and down 75%, a lot of times is what's considered quote unquote good for reliability. And here you have Tesla, their charging stations are consistently 99+% reliable, up, running, on time, and everything is working.
And what you have is simplicity. With that Trident connector, it's able to sense both AC and DC charging. So you don't have to have a massive connector that gives you two different outlets, whether it's DC or AC. All of that switching or that sensing is done in the high voltage junction box inside the Tesla vehicles. So it looks like these other manufacturers, now Ford and GM, are going to have to adopt that as well.
I think so, and I think that's just gonna be a great move. It's so simple. It's so, again, I think of it as the more or even most elegant. Tesla is also the company in the lead when it comes to charging speeds.
Mhm.
Their fourth generation charger already does, I think it's 800 kilowatts, and they've got for the Tesla Semi and for the Cybertruck, they're looking at megawatt plus charging capabilities.
And so even though Elon thought originally that he will develop his own sales organization and he's not going to work through the existing dealers, now those dealers are going to have Tesla charging stations and superchargers on their facilities,
That is
and you'll
true.
probably see various brands of vehicles charging.
What do you think of the Tesla owners who are now going to be competing with The Chevy Bolts and the Volts and the Ford Mustangs and so on and so forth.
Well, they got us used to that, if you remember, by opening it up in various parts of the world on a small scale initially,
Sure.
so that the Tesla chargers could be used for other types of vehicles. Of course, now this is going to put or create some impetus to create even more charging stations. And it seems to me that now it's not just Tesla that's going to be motivated to do this. We've got the other car manufacturers that are going to jump into this and assist with developing charging infrastructure.
I think so as well. It's going to be really interesting to see how this reverberates around the world because, it is the North American charging standard.
Hmm.
Um, the United States and Canada and Mexico as North America are probably the largest and most lucrative block of potential growth for EVs. I know that China is a bigger market in terms of raw population. I know that India is a bigger market in terms of raw population. But at the same time, I don't think they have the funds to be able to quickly expand like the United States.
Right.
In Europe, they have the funds and they have a large population, larger than the US, but they're so much further along in their EV adoption that the ripple effect, the market's more mature. And that's where I'm interested in seeing this go.
So, any of these global car manufacturers, EV manufacturers, are highly motivated at this point to adopt that standard if they want to sell any cars in the United States. Granted, in their own
Yeah.
country, they may keep their own standard, but for them to open up sales in this country, it's, again, to remain competitive, they're going to have to adopt this.
Hey guys, we have some questions. Do
yeah.
you have the stats over there too, Pete? Because read that second one, you can see.
Yeah. So when does this start? YouTube, Brick 2929. According to Mary Barra this afternoon, and I suggest you guys view that voice-only podcast.
Twitter Space.
Yeah, Twitter Space. Okay. She mentioned that by spring of next year, they will be in full production on these charging methods.
Yeah, one of the articles that I had read, in fact, the article that I read, said that GM would be fully transitioned to the Trident charger by probably early to mid 2025. Earlier this last week, Ford was talking about having the Trident charger beginning to be available mid 2024 and be pretty much transitioned to a Trident charger in their vehicles by 2025 as well.
And of course, like Elon pointed out, he said, this is an inflection point because with this kind of standardization now taking place, it is going to drive EV adoption even more vigorously than it has in the past.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. If I were to look at it from a technology standpoint, it would be almost like Apple opening up their ecosystem to Android users.
Which would be remarkable, wouldn't it?
It would be something else.
So we've got some more questions here. Lightning Rod is back with us. Welcome. He says, "What? Twice a day? Fantastic."
Thanks, Lightning Rod. I'm glad to see you here.
LinkedIn, Art Man says 100%. So it looks like he's behind this as well. And Instagram, Top Kataz says, "I just got home from Los Angeles. I went to the Peterson Automotive Museum and saw the Tesla Semi and an amazing collection of Tesla vehicles." Our team, our social media team was there at the grand opening.
Right.
And we have video, we have images. It was definitely one of the most noteworthy Tesla/SpaceX experiences within recent years.
Wish I could have been there. That would have been a lot of fun to go to.
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube, Ryan Flint says Ford and GM are switching to Tesla charging. Finally, a standard has been set.
Yeah,
that's right. And then on David Buckland on YouTube says, "Do you think that the Magic Dock was just an adapter field test?"
Probably, yeah.
I wonder. I have to wonder. I think that Ford and GM were probably in negotiation with Tesla, and Elon had decided, "Hey, I'm not going to wait to figure out one way or the other. We're gonna try to go forward and start testing with this Magic Dock solution in case Ford and GM and anyone else doesn't come to the party." The thing that I like about the Magic Dock is, again, maybe my Volvo isn't quite so irrelevant because it's one of the multiple cars, Hyundai and Kia and many others that do still have the CCS ports.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So yeah, we're pretty excited about this change, and it's great news for the EV community. On the
Well,
flip,
hold on, real quick. We also want to make sure we mentioned that they did say for GM they'll have the adapters by the end of this year, or if not, sooner.
Mhm.
Then the actual vehicles made with the charging port would be 2025.
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, definitely. So we have another bit of news. Apparently, this is on the wire too. Today seems to be a newsworthy day. NIKOLA apparently is tanking. And
Hmm.
what we know so far is you were mentioning that the stock was down 99%.
Yeah, stock is down 99%. The management of the company has gone out to the stockholders and said, we're going to need to raise more capital. And if, as stockholders, you vote down the option to issue additional shares, then there will be real questions as to whether Nikola will be a viable business going forward, or their term was a going concern.
Mhm. And just this morning, we spoke about the feasibility of hydrogen powered vehicles in the first place. And as Farzad pointed out, one of our guests this morning, Farzad Mesbahi, was with us. He said, Sandy says that the only solution or the only application for hydrogen that he might see would be in semis or long distance transport. Um, but anyway, some brief history. Trevor Milton in 2014 started NIKOLA and secured some pretty substantial funding. They ended up buying a couple hundred acres here in the state of Arizona. Cost them $23 million for that land, and began to create a production facility, which a number of influencers have gone out to see and were, reasonably impressed with. Um, however, June of 2020, NIKOLA had reached a valuation exceeding Ford Motor Company. Now here's a company that's been around 100 years or more, right?
Right.
So that was pretty remarkable. By August, it was a $13 billion valuation. And a month later, in September, there were some indictments handed down for fraud. Trevor Milton was eventually indicted and found guilty of some of those. And new
Hmm.
management, of course, came in and really tried to keep the company alive and keep that momentum going.
If I remember correctly, a lot of that fraud centered around Nikola putting out a video of one of their electric vehicles driving, only for people to find out after the fact that they had literally taken that vehicle, towed it up to the top of a hill, turned it around, and let it coast down the hill.
I wonder if they changed the camera angle so that you couldn't see the decline in that hill. But anyway,
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, that was part of it. And the stock price at that point was $65 a share. The initial price was $12 a share apparently, and during the IPO.
Hmm.
But yeah, I remember I invested in it too, and I have one share left, so I'm not hurting too badly today at 60 cents a share.
Yes, yes. Oof. I think just so that I could track it, I bought a couple of shares of it. I'm sure that whatever value I had is gone.
So we've got a few more questions coming in now. It's one from YouTube, Lightning Rod. He says Ford, GM, and all the others were not going to adopt it at any cost when they finally realized there is no other viable option. Does Mr. Musk personally own the patent for this particular plug?
No, I don't think he does personally, but I do think Tesla owns the patent. The real key here, though, is that Elon made an announcement, I think a couple years ago, that they were going to basically open their patents up to the world.
Hmm.
Um, Elon Musk had the foresight to understand that holding in that kind of knowledge and trying to license it at a huge premium was only going to make people bypass him,
Hmm.
because there were other standards, CCS, that were going to be freely available to anybody. He wanted to get ahead of that curve. He understood and has learned the lessons that have taken place in the technology space. And so he opened up that patent for no charge for people to be able to adopt.
Hmm.
Now, I think the only negotiation, as it were, is not in the technology to build the standard, but rather in the power generation and usage for how are Ford and GM customers going to pay for power that's generated on the Tesla network.
Mm-hmm. Details that have to be hammered out, it sounds like.
Yeah, probably some details.
From YouTube, Art Man, he says, my friend just bought 2 hydrogen cars from Toyota. Now, here's a major auto manufacturer that's still hanging in there with hydrogen,
Yes.
which is amazing. I would hope that they would begin to focus more on EVs and, but, it's their choice. So he says they bought 2 hydrogen cars from Toyota. They gave him $10,000 off and a $15,000 card for free fill-ups. I wonder how many of these they've sold. Well, it sounds like not that many if they're willing to give or make $25,000 concessions.
Yeah, it sounds like there's not a lot of them sold. I know that another article I had, a piece of breaking news that I had seen today is that Toyota is going to dip their feet into the EV space a little bit more. They're investing $48 million in a plant to explore and figure out how to make battery electric vehicles. And
Interesting.
That's something, again, I just, my lunchtime reading, all kinds of cool stuff came out.
Maybe 10 years too late.
Yeah, maybe 10 years too late, though. That the news, a few weeks back, we had said there's a new CEO at Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
The new CEO said they're going to go several different routes toward net zero carbon in the future, and that primary among those routes was going to be electrification of their cars, including battery electric vehicles. Just that they're really slow to the party, and they really seem to be hesitant to move forward. I think hydrogen's a technology, though.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about that just earlier
this morning. Lots of plumbing, and we're trying to get away from all of that.
Yeah.
And then, as you had mentioned, I didn't know this, but apparently the atomic. Tell us that again about the leaks. That was fascinating.
Oh yeah. Well, hydrogen molecules are the smallest molecules in the world, basically. Because the hydrogen atom is only that one nucleus and one electron. And so hydrogen fuel has a terrible propensity to leak. It's incredibly difficult to seal a fueling system against hydrogen leaks. That's why you see so many delays with the solid rockets, whether it's NASA's rockets, whether it's the SpaceX rockets, because they're all hydrogen fueled. Hydrogen is highly energy dense, and because of the combination of the lightness and the amount of energy that can be stored to power these rockets, it's a good fuel for that. But the hydrogen, because the atoms are so small, has a tendency to leak.
Interesting. Okay. So there's some design challenges there too. Looks like Facebook. Josh Ray is joining us. Welcome. He says, new Model Y performance delivery on Monday. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, Lester Marshall, NIKOLA has a problem with infrastructure. There's not enough H2 filling stations.
Same problem that the EV manufacturers would have had if it wasn't for the standardization, especially if they developed their own charging standard. Who is it? Atlas, I think, is making this gigantic connector that, I can't imagine will ever gain any ground. But they're not called that anymore. They're NXU now.
Yes, I'd heard that just recently.
Yeah.
And I'd heard that they've also abandoned their plans to develop their own vehicle and now are just focusing on the battery technology, which, frankly, I love the big trucks, the pickup trucks, so I was a little sad to hear that.
Really? Yeah. YouTube Lightning Rod, he says, in the universe.
Yes. And on YouTube, Crunch to Grace Hopper, my 100% Tesla Roth IRA is loving this.
Yes.
2 times a year from now. Crunch, you are certainly right. I think this is a huge bump for Tesla's stock. I really wonder what's going to happen to the other EV charging companies like Blink or ChargePoint, or especially, Electrify America gets the negative press. What's going to happen to those guys? Because the 800-pound gorilla of charging that's always been caged has just broken out of its cage.
Yeah. J1772 will go away.
Yeah, I think it will.
Just occurred to me, we've got adapters in inventory. We're going to have to sell those and not reorder them, right?
Yeah.
Well, so what we did today was a little bit different. We had our morning show, And we decided, since we've got some breaking news, we will just do impromptu sessions like this from time to time. And I hope you're enjoying them. Any of you curious about our green screen background? If you're seeing something other than green screen, which I think TikTok still is,
Actually, just Instagram is
just
seeing.
just Instagram.
Instagram's the only one that sees the
Okay,
green
all right.
screen. Instagram, go to YouTube, take a look at it.
Yeah, it's an awesome background. What I asked for in the prompt with AI was, give me a tropical setting newsroom, and this is what it came up with. The colors are just magnificent, and it places us in a beautiful setting like this.
This is one of my favorites of all the newsroom backgrounds that we've had.
YouTube, Chuck Kennedy is chiming in. He says, how long till Electrified America has to change plugs? Well, this won't be an overnight change. So, but I would imagine that any of these manufacturers are very busy putting things on the drawing board and getting ready to migrate.
Well, and the big thing here, again, the Tesla patents are open.
Yeah.
So any competitor who wants to change to a Trident plug on their charging stations
Mhm.
is going to be welcome to do so, and they're not going to have to pay any kind of royalty to Tesla. Couple years, I
Mhm.
think, would be the max before Electrify America really has to start moving toward changing plugs. I don't know if they'll have to retrofit their current stations as much as it is just putting new stations in with new plugs because of the amount of growth that's out there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think as their stations need to go in for repair and stuff, if I were Electrify America, I'd be figuring it out now.
Would it
Yep.
be difficult to just have all of the different charging plugs, you think?
Be
Is that-
be difficult. Yeah.
Just have a variety of options?
You know, Electrify, it's not Electrify America, it's EVgo has done that. They have a few charging stations that have the older CHAdeMO plug, as well as the J1772 plug, as well as the newer CCS plug. And it works kind of okay.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like when you have a gas tank with a gas pump with 3 nozzles, but you can only use 1 nozzle at a time. It really causes confusion.
I understand why you would want to separate your diesel nozzle from your standard ICE fuel.
Yeah.
Because you can create some damage if you do that. But at least in the ICE world, that's the only deviation, and you tend to get both in most pumps. Bunch of questions coming in. Art Man from YouTube, he says, y'all look clean in those shades. This is great. Put
Thank
on
you.
your own, Art. Yeah. We actually have our guests donning sunglasses now, like Farzad this morning, although he felt a bit guilty because he had $10 shades, and he must have seen my Oakleys. But he did tell us a story that he had Oakleys at one point in time,
Yes.
and foolishly went to the ocean, and a wave took them away.
That's right. That's right. You know, and I have not paid the full price for. I have my Ray-Bans right now on. I haven't paid full price for those in forever. Oh, my wife likes to get her new sunglasses every couple of years. So I always make sure that we go to the buy one, get one half off sale.
Right.
And then I go to the bargain counter and find the ones that are already 40% off and then get another half off of that.
See, you sound like my wife. Yeah, she's a bargain hunter. We had a sales rep, or have a sales rep here, that was going to be part of these podcasts at one point, and she felt that in order for her to participate, we have to buy her sunglasses, but they were a very special type. And after I heard there were $800, I said, "Nah, I don't think so."
It was like Prada or Gucci or something.
Yeah.
I think both, actually.
And I think you're paying for the name. I mean, even with Oakleys, I think you'd be hard pressed to tell a difference between that and the dollar store variety.
Yeah, by all means.
So YouTube, David Buckland says Tesla published the white paper on the plug last year. That is correct, David. And as Marcus pointed out, they made all the technology available to the public.
Yep. And then YouTube, Fine Power Tools, Sales West. SK Signet just opened a plant in Plano, Texas, to augment their South Korea plant. I wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think, while I say I'm not sure, I think what's going to happen is that people are going to get on board and they're going to follow in the lead that Ford and that GM have taken.
So YouTube, Super Cape Rock says, should I have sold Charge Point at $37? There's another ramification that just occurred to me. You're right. Some of these other companies, it's going to affect some of their valuation, is it not? Especially if they can't pivot quickly enough.
Depending if they can pivot quickly enough or not. Yes, I think there's some risk to some of those other companies.
Of course, at the same token, Jesse and I were talking about the fact that Tesla was mysteriously creeping up for the last week or two. It's entirely possible that some of this may have leaked.
Yeah, that's that
Yeah.
insider trading you were saying.
Yeah,
Who knows who made a bundle on this?
yeah.
I think you and I were talking about it on Tuesday when it was at 221,
Uh-huh.
and we're like, what is driving that share price up right now?
Because you normally expect when there's a bump like that, there's a correction.
Yeah.
And there wasn't one. It continued to climb. But, we won't make any allegations of insider trading. I'm sure this never happens.
Oh, of course not. Josh Ray on Facebook has asked us, do you guys have an opinion on Rivians?
You know what? Our guest this morning did. We asked Farzad. Actually, someone in the audience asked, Farzad, which company do you like better, Lucid or Rivian?
Yes.
And I expected him to say Lucid because we're always saying, the Saudis, they're not going to abandon Lucid. It's their second act. Their oil gig is dead. They're going to have to go in the EV space, and it's a logical thing for them to continue to fund. But do you want to point out what Farzad said about Rivian, which was surprising to me?
I was surprised, but impressed by his analysis where he said Rivian has a much larger market that they go to. People who are more everyday people. They're driving the SUVs, they're driving the pickup trucks, and frankly, Rivian has an attractive looking product in both of those spaces. So it has a much larger audience that it can potentially sell to than Lucid does, where Lucid is selling just to the audience that are typically wealthy enough to be able to buy the other high-end cars, Porsches and things of, the really high-end cars like
Right.
that. And that's a much smaller market. So he was much more bullish on Rivian.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure.
I initially heard him saying it, and I was ready to contest some of it. But then when he described, the ramp that Rivian has compared to Lucid, it began to make some sense.
It does make some sense. I'm not convinced totally because of the management of Rivian versus the management of Lucid.
Mhm.
Now, that to me, to a certain extent, the management of Lucid seems to be trying to run their company with a strategy of we're not Tesla.
Mhm.
Everything that Tesla does, Lucid doesn't do, type of thing. I know that that's a broad generalization and not necessarily totally true, but Peter Rawlinson was one of the engineers. He's very organized. He's very structured. And it seems like that's how they're going about putting out their cars. The one really good point I think Forza did make, however, was that with Lucid, right now they've got a sedan that's not producing a lot of sales numbers. And they're going to pivot and start to develop an SUV. They kind of put all their eggs in that SUV basket. And if that SUV bombs, what happens?
Right.
Well, that's something I had not thought of before.
Kind of like the Tesla Model X. It's a great vehicle, but it certainly didn't light the world on fire.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's risk with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, of all of the startup EV manufacturers out there, I would hope that most, if not all of them, will make it. I think that Lucid and Rivian are alone on that B tier list of EV manufacturers that are truly startups, not Ford and GM trying to pivot.
Now, mentioning those two companies, it looks like they may also be candidates for adopting this NACS standard.
Yes, they may be. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them try to do that, although I think for Lucid, that would be a bitter pill to swallow.
Now, guys, one thing I don't think I've seen a lot of people talk about that maybe we can speculate on, and Pete, I'm sure you have that story when you came back from California. Superchargers are already pretty busy places. So
They are.
what is this going to look like now that we're going to have dozens of different models of Fords and GMs and everything swarming the chargers?
Well, hopefully, we'll be able to build infrastructure to keep pace with the demand, which is inevitable. And again, with other manufacturers participating now, it's not all Tesla's dime. This may just be the impetus necessary to create sufficient charging capacity.
I think that Tesla has been going overboard or over time, maybe, in trying to build out their capacity. I remember just a couple of years ago taking a trip to California and seeing that we had a supercharger, up here in North Phoenix, close to our facility, down in Buckeye, which is in Southwest Phoenix,
Right.
over in Quartzsite, Indio, and then to Los Angeles. And it was good. They were 130 miles apart. It's fine. I have good range, and everything was fine. Now I look, and 20 miles north of us, there's a supercharger. And 15 miles south of us, there's a supercharger. It seems like there's 3 times as many superchargers here just in the local Phoenix area than there were just 2 years ago. And Phoenix is not unique. I think Tesla is aggressively building out its infrastructure, not only because of the number of vehicles that they have coming online with all the Model Y and Model 3 sales, but because of the number of vehicles that might be able to come online from other manufacturers.
The Biltmore is actually growing. They're expanding their supercharger. I saw that come across the wire earlier this week. But the other thing that we may not be thinking about is the Tesla charging systems are large in that you have plenty of destination chargers. You go to any major hotel, motel, mall, they typically have Tesla type charging systems there.
Yes.
So now these other vehicles will be able to take advantage of those as well.
And David Buckland on YouTube makes an excellent point. I know I'm skipping a couple of comments and questions when he says Tesla did not open all the chargers.
Right.
Well, I don't know if that's the case for GM as well as Ford, but I do know that was the case for Ford. They took basically they took a look at their chargers. They opened up about half of their network to Ford vehicles immediately, but the half that they opened up was the half of their network that had the lowest usage.
Okay.
Tesla,
makes sense.
like any manufacturing company or like any company in business for themselves, you're going to have a certain amount of fixed costs and you're going to have a certain amount of variable costs. There's a certain fixed cost to keeping these chargers maintained. And if somebody else can come in and help boost the revenue simply by opening it up to another manufacturer, huge win for Tesla.
Well, here comes some of the ramifications again. YouTube Super Cape Rock says ChargePoint is way down in after-hours trading. This is a Tsunami North American charging standard. So he has a new name for it.
Yeah, I think it's completely on point as well. Super Cape Rock on YouTube also says that EVgo stock price is dropping like a rock after hours.
There you go.
If any of you guys are hearing anything about Electrify America or Blink, because I know that Blink is public, I'd love to hear that as well.
And of course, we're not investment advisors, but I hope you guys are familiar with shorting stock. And some of the brokerage houses let you do that after hours. YouTube, let's see. David Buckland, he says, Tesla didn't open all the chargers. That is correct. YouTube, Mark James, he says, imagine pulling up to a supercharger and having all 250 stalls filled with bolts that can only charge at 50 kW. Yeah, good point.
Oh my gosh, that would be so frustrating. Artman on YouTube, by the way, has said the Oakley lenses are worth the money.
For sure, yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then Fine Power Tool Sales West also says, I saw Monroe Live's teardown of the Lucid battery, and I was shocked at the complexity and part count. What's the Rivian like?
We've never done a Rivian teardown. Has Sandy? I think Sandy's done one, hasn't he?
Yeah, we'll have to research that. I think he bought one to tear down, and then he liked it so much, I think he bought one. Him and his wife bought another one to actually have. But we'll have to look into that. I don't know if they've done as thorough of a breakdown as they did on the Lucid.
Yeah. And of course, our position on this is, and when we had Sandy on our show, actually, there was a lot of discussion about this. We're in the reverse engineering business. We're in the business of repairing things like this. And until we have a chance to figure out if these are repairable or not, we're going to not weigh in on this and hope that we have yet another battery pack that we can revive, recover, and rebuild.
Absolutely. Facebook, Josh Ray asks, would the pay system for supercharging be compatible with the other EVs? I'm going to speculate and say, yes, it would be. The announcement when Ford came on was that Ford owners would be able to download and register themselves on the Tesla app, and then they would be able to pay for charging through the Tesla app. Don't know if that's going to be true with the GM as well, although I can't imagine it would be any other way.
And the thing that I think that people don't focus on enough is that Tesla really has a culture. They are very much passionate about the transition to sustainable energy. They're not a greedy corporation. Maybe they were in the early days when they were drawing red ink left and right. The search for margin was overwhelming, I'm sure. But at this point in time, Elon is the richest man on the planet, on and off anyway. And Tesla is one of the most profitable car company on the planet.
Yes.
I'm not sure that their primary focus is generating more revenue. I think that they truly believe in this cause to clean the planet and make it more inhabitable for our future generations. So that's my take on it.
I think you're right there. We had, as we were talking to Farzad earlier today, we were talking about one of his recent podcasts where a guest of his had said, look, Tesla in the next few years is going to be generating possibly as much as $60 billion in free cash flow. Where are they going to put all that money?
Yeah.
And then they were talking about how they're going to build out their infrastructure and they're going to do things to help make this a better place for future generations.
And I don't think Elon's the type of guy that wants to build the world's tallest skyscraper or a ski resort in the middle of the desert. I think they'll continue to responsibly reinvest, which is exactly what they've been doing. As Farzad says, not only do we now get a gigafactory in Mexico, there's talk of one in India, and suddenly Spain pops up this week.
Yeah.
So
we need as many as possible because their demand is insane. You know, they put out those things on Instagram and Twitter all the time with a picture of all the staff of the whole factory saying congrats on 4,000 vehicles this week or something like that. But that's not, they need much more than that to hit the demand.
They haven't reached their goals yet. When they say 4,000 per week, I think the goal in that particular one, maybe that was Giga Berlin, was something like 10,000 per week.
Yeah, they wanted to get to 10,000. They had scaled up to 4, and we're about to scale up to 5. I think they've passed 5,000 a week now. They want to hit 10,000 a week. In Mexico, I know that they want to hit 5 million a year just out of that one factory. So David Buckland on YouTube, follow-up comment says, Mary Barra said, I believe 12,000 superchargers. That sounds like the same deal, which I agree. I think that does sound like the same deal. I hope part of the deal is port location on the vehicle. David, that's an excellent point there. There have been spotty reports of people who have tried to use the CCS adapter, and there's 12 or 13 charging stations, a couple in New York and like 10 in Los Angeles, and they've gotten some mixed reviews because other cars pull up and they find that they can't reach it.
Yeah, exactly.
The Tesla cable from the supercharger to the car is only like 4 feet long because they assume that it's only a Tesla pulling up there, and a Tesla port is right near the back tail light. So you just back right up and pull it out, and then you go.
So we think there may be some modifications necessary for Tesla to accommodate this additional influx of vehicles that will be charging.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be.
Okay, YouTube, Bob Roof, he says Quartzsite, you're familiar with Quartzsite,
Yes.
Any of us that go to California, has 40 Tesla chargers now, and it's announced that they're adding 120 more. Well, that's great news.
That is great news. And that, for those of you that are not familiar with Quartzsite, in the summertime, Quartzsite is maybe 5,000 people total for population. In the wintertime, Quartzsite's about 60,000 people.
Is that right?
Snowbirds,
right?
Snowbirds.
Yeah, we call them snowbirds.
We call them snowbirds. They're people that have come down from the north. Generally, they're retirees. Many of them are coming to either live in their single white trailers or park model trailers that they've left down there permanently, or they're people that have driven down their RVs. The number of RV camps and things out there is just insane.
I don't see the question anymore, but somebody earlier pointed out that I look like Tom Cruise. Thank you for the compliment, by the way.
Yes.
He's also aging well.
On Facebook, Bruce Hobbs, the question of longer lines. Bruce, there's a good chance. We've got a couple years to really get this transition underway. I'm sure that there are a number of Tesla owners that are less than thrilled with the prospect that they're going to have to share their chargers with a lot of other brands of cars. And you had said, Pete, that it wasn't just GM and Ford. I think you said Aptera has already announced.
Aptera did, yeah, weeks ago, that they were adopting the NACS charging standard. So the question now is, how quickly will the other guys follow suit?
Yeah, by all means. And my question again with my Volvo is, where do I go to buy an NACS to CCS adapter that goes the opposite way?
Right. YouTube, Skylark Torch says, definitely looks tropical or our backdrop, yes. He says he's been petitioning his office building to provide access to standard 20 amp outlets so we can get a trickle charge during the day. And he says, I hope it could be an inexpensive option for the building. 120 volt, 20 amp is the standard circuit breaker size in commercial circuit breaker panels. So there are plenty of them around. I guess you'll just need to lobby with your building and see if you can get some of that infrastructure installed there.
There's been with the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the infrastructure improvements that act is supposed to include as well. There's a lot of improvement capabilities for places, even like office buildings, to build 240 volt, 50 amp destination chargers. So that would be another way that you guys could look at talking to your office building management, see if they can partner with their local power company and see whether or not that local power company is pursuing things like federal grants, because there's a lot of money out there to be spent on these types of things.
It just occurred to me that the J1772 standard is going the way of the beta tape. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Of course, both are gone now. So, and in the future, that may be the same case with this NACS standard. If we ever get to the point where we're no longer carrying our DC storage around with us, then any of these types of charging methods will be obsolete. But in the meantime, we've got a decade or two of needing this kind of infrastructure.
We're getting some good love on these questions. If you guys want to keep going with the top one, that's Crunch.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Crunch, both my M3P and MYLR trips from SoCal to Austin Starbase in April 22 and to Starbase in April 23 were seamless. And so MP3 is going to be Model 3 Performance and Model Y Long Range. Next trip, I'm hoping to drop in for a Gruber Motors tour.
Awesome.
Oh,
Yes.
Crunch, we'd love to see you and meet you. Smuggler is here as well on TikTok. Smuggler is gifting and liking the stream as usual.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Smuggler.
you, Smuggler.
Yeah.
Sky-
Question down below, too. You see his question?
Yes, Smuggler's question was,
Or statement, I guess.
or the other vehicles can use an adapter cable to extend the supercharger cable. But with more vehicles accepting the standard, there will be more stations that Tesla owners can also use.
It's a good point. I suppose a heavy enough extension cord would work.
I suppose, the Tesla station closest to us, I believe, is a level 2 station or a Gen 2 station where you can have up to about 250 kilowatts. And that cable is almost an inch thick.
Yeah.
The latest generation, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that there's just a third generation charging station with Tesla, and it gets up to 350 kilowatts, and they've got a fourth generation station that they're developing for the Cybertruck and the Semi that can do close to 800 kilowatts, and they're all using this same Trident charger.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a hard time lugging around an extension cord even 3 or 4 feet long if it had to be 2 inches thick of pure metal.
Right. Now, let's not forget that if we were to increase the charging voltage of these batteries to 800 volts, the amperage would be cut in half.
That is true. And the amperage cutting in half It's almost like what we've talked about with the batteries going from 12 to 48 volts, the size of the wire would go way down. Cars are going that direction too. There are a number of vehicles that do 800-volt charging already here in the US.
hmm
Um,
So there's some solutions, and boy, the questions are coming in. Let's go YouTube. Bernard Homan. Hi from Toluca, Mexico. Thank you for joining us. He says, hope to visit Gruber Motors soon.
Likewise, we hope to see you. On TikTok, OG Triple OG, did you make that Model S a ghost car?
Not sure what that one's referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure as well. Let's go down to YouTube, Super Cape Rock, Tesla stock at $244.89. That's up
You're
$35
kidding.
after hours.
Oh my God.
Wow. Hope there are some Tesla investors out here. YouTube, Hop Mad, Electrify America, transition them to the Tesla standard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Without a doubt. TikTok, Adopt Me says, hi, welcome.
welcome.
TikTok, Jose Landman says, how much to replace a Model 3 battery? Just the labor portion, we're probably looking in the neighborhood of $1,500 or so.
Okay.
And assuming that you have the battery. Let's not forget that everything we work on is typically out of warranty unless it's an aftermarket conversion and something that the Tesla Service Center won't touch. But yeah, we work on out of warranty, so we don't see many Model 3s yet.
Okay. Smuggler has an answer to that question that we didn't know much about. He says he's talking about the Roadster that you just posted. He just got the model wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay. That was the Lotus that we're talking about?
Not sure. You're talking about a ghost car. I don't really know what that refers to, but it's one of the vehicles we did recently. So probably, yeah, the custom Lotus.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if it's that red Florida Roadster.
That was a standard legacy battery pack. So, yeah, well, we're not sure. If you want to ask us a bit more, maybe, or explain, we'll try to answer it. Then we've got YouTube, Lightning Rod. He says, higher voltage equals smaller diameter wire. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Smuggler again on TikTok. When there is a will, there is a way. You toss enough money at something, and some will make it.
That's very true. It's free enterprise.
Yep.
Yep. Instagram, Top Kataz. He says, can the U.S. electrical grid keep up with continued growth of EV charging needs? And the best way for us to answer that is to refer you to our YouTube video, where in researching the video we built, which actually poses that question, can the grid keep up? The research that we ended up doing indicates that yes, the grid, global grid actually, is growing at a pace currently that will continue to support EV adoption. And it's like Smuggler said earlier, I believe it was Smuggler, if you throw enough money at something, if there's enough demand, the market will respond.
By all means. On YouTube, Chris Burzon says the cable gets hot. You need superconductors. Chris, that is a good point. As you increase voltage, you're going to decrease amperage, and amperage is what causes heat. Amperage is the current that goes through, and that current is not 100% not 100% efficient. Superconductors, which essentially have zero resistance, would be another way, though.
Mm-hmm. YouTube, Mark James says, neither Ford nor GM have vehicles or technology that can take advantage of the 250 kW superchargers. If I was Tesla, he says, I'd be giving them access to all the 150 kW and less chargers, and let's keep the 250s for the Tesla owners.
That's a great point that he's got there.
Why tie up a 250 kW charger, for someone that can't utilize it? Like someone earlier pointed out, we're going to have a whole bunch of bolts charging at 50 kW.
Yeah. I've been in Los Angeles getting to a supercharger at 9:30 at night and having to wait until 10:30 in order to actually plug in and charge.
That long.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's late evening, and there were 16 stations there. And it was just, it is what it is. You're an early adopter and you just live with it. But if I had 4 or 5 bolts sitting in front of me, knowing that it's going to take them
Yeah.
an hour and a half each to charge, I would not be a happy camper.
But you know, we have to put this back in perspective. The folks in that neighboring state are used to waiting for virtually everything. Have you ever seen their freeways?
Well, that is true. That is true.
All right.
We have a clarification again from Smuggler. I think with the ghost vehicle they were talking about is we just released the TikTok not too long ago where it was an all black Roadster, black on black with black rims and black everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
was
was
just
the
a TikTok.
customer. Yeah. One of those customers that wanted something very black. It had a black interior. He blacked out the rear window and the side windows, actually, and the headlights. And then he had us put this really cool reflective black onto the rims or onto the wheels. And I was surprised they were able to powder coat that. It almost looks like a shiny, dark gunmetal gray type wheel.
Oh, wow.
Really a sharp looking Roadster. And yeah, so
I'll have to look at that one more closely then.
Mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
so I think that's all the questions that have come in for now, and that's 55 minutes. So
Okay,
it's
so
another
we're in an
hour
hour.
for you guys.
All right.
Wow. Well, thank you guys for all the questions. I know that we were, this was more intended to be a breaking news segment than anything else. So I think maybe we just summarize that breaking news. So even though we've been talking about it a lot, General Motors has agreed with Tesla to become part of the Tesla's NACS charging network by 2025. All GM vehicles will have the Trident connector in their cars instead of the current CCS standard.
And quite a revolutionary announcement in that we've all been hoping for some form of standardization with charging. So this is very welcome news. And of course, this will drive the other EV manufacturers to adopt the same standard. Finally, we have 3 major players that have decided this is the way to go.
And I think we agree with Elon in saying we've probably reached that tipping point that they've been looking for.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for joining us as always. We'll see you next week. For those of you that watch our EV broadcasts, it's Tuesday at 10 a.m. PST and Thursday 10 a.m. at PST. And Wednesday we have our 10 o'clock Roadster podcast streaming, and that's when most of the Roadster owners show up. So again, we hope you all have a pleasant evening, and we've enjoyed spending some time with you again.
Take care.